Grand rising, grand rising, grand rising, beloveds. I hope you all slept well. I hope you had a very rejuvenating and regenerative rest. I hope today brings new journeys and new adventures for you all. I hope that you find new ways to prosper and live your best life, baby. So, what I wanted to talk to you guys briefly about, real quick, is a part of the healing ritual, a part of the Healing Shadows ritual that I call acknowledgement of past and present self. And with this part of the healing ritual, this is literally your first essay. This is literally your dedication and your quote unquote contract with spirit. So when you're doing the acknowledgement of self, past and present, what this part is specifically talking about is the fact of we tend to make a lot of choices every day, right? Can't nobody tell us what to do. But even though we realize we have a lot of our own place and space to make our own choices, do you ever actually take responsibility and accountability for those choices that you make? Not just the good ones, the good and bad. Do you actually stop and take responsibility and accountability for some of the situations, circumstances you have put yourself or allowed yourself to be into? So that's what we're going to be talking about with this first part of acknowledgement of self and past self. So one thing that I love that with me being a sexual abuse counselor, healer, one thing that I do tell my students, my godchildren, and everything with healing a lot of the past traumas and doing shadow work is rule number one: there is no such thing as a victim here. And I know that statement right there may offend a lot of people because they feel, oh, well, you can't tell me I wasn't a victim. I know what happened to me. But see, sweetie, that's the key word right there. Happened. 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 Meaning that it's no longer occurring. So when people always tend to harbor on this happened, you're allowing yourself not to move forward. And what you're choosing to do is acknowledge the fact that something did happen to you in the past. Yes, what happened to you in the past was traumatic. What happened to you was a very overwhelming experience. And hell, whatever happened to you may have gotten you to the point where you lost your soul. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it still is in the past. Whatever happened to you in that past, it is now considered a past life of yours. Because you cannot go back and relive that life. You cannot go back and change whatever was done. So at this point, place, and space, you are harboring and hanging on to a past life that can no longer help you. You are intentionally hanging on to that pain because now it has become so manifested and so deeply rooted that it is an identity of yours. You cannot identify yourself without identifying with that trauma or without identifying to that trigger. So, for instance, some of that may come into play where you are in a relationship. And I know for some of us in the BDSM world, you may feel a certain way about having a very sexually aggressive partner. But you also have to sort of dig down to the root of why you have that sexually aggressive partner. And for some people, it may be that you were mentally and sexually abused or mentally and sexually conditioned to feel that that was appropriate. So now whenever you want sex, it got to be hardcore. It got to be choking, smacking, and all of that. But the thing is, if you cannot come to terms with why you like that in the beginning, because let's be honest, nobody want to really be choked up, slapped, and none of that. You choke me and slap me, I'm gonna give you every right and reason to kill me, because I'm gonna try and kill you first. Period. Don't put your hands on me. But for those of us that do like that type of stuff, you sort of have to understand where a lot of that comes from. And even past that, a lot of the sexual abuse and trauma came all the way back from slavery with buck breaking and things. So, with that being said, you really have to be aware of some of the sexual traumas that have occurred around you. And not only that, you have to be aware of some of the sexual traumas that you may have inflicted on somebody else. Just because you like rough sex, you may have been intimate with somebody that really wasn't all for that rough sex shit, but they went with it because you liked it. But in the end, that has sort of become a trigger to them to where they don't want to ever do that shit again with nobody because of how you were. So now you have unintentionally traumatized someone else sexually because of a sexual urge or a craving that you may have had. Everybody don't like that. Everybody can't deal with it. Everybody can't tolerate it. So you really have to be aware of your sexual preferences when you are doing things and dealing with other people. Another part of this acknowledgement of past self and present self comes into play with a lot of the choices that we done made. Now, I know this one is also going to get on a lot of people's nerves when I say this, and when I also say this, I don't care. But ladies, you cannot continue to want to manifest, a decent man or a decent husband or anything of that nature, and you're still talking negative about your baby daddy or your father and stuff. You got to figure out why you even thinking that way. Let's get to the root of the real issue here. Why do you feel comfortable calling this man everything but a child of God? I mean, clearly, if you made the choice to lay with him, he wasn't that bad. And I know I've done that myself. Didn't know the man from a can of paint, but was so messed up in my own sexual trauma and healing that all people aren't bad people. All hurt people don't hurt other people. Sometimes they just really want to help. And ended up in the situation shipping in the marriage with a complete stranger. And when it came down to us being aligned mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, the man was a whole atheist. Didn't believe in nothing that I believed in. But because I was a person who was, oh, 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 I manifested the negative aspect of that. And then I had to own the negative aspect of that when my daughter was born. And now I am faced with this traumatic person every time. And it's literally, how are you going to respond this time? How are you going to respond this year? And every time I have to check myself at the door spiritually, regardless to whatever trauma me and this person had been through. Because at the end of the day, I had to understand that as much as I was a hurt person, I hurt other people as well. Because I did not have the understanding nor the patience that I have now, I very much damaged some quite a few other people. Because I was not able to face a lot of my own truths, inabilities, and insecurities, I ended up hurting a lot of decent people. So when you realize that and then you're faced with that over and over and over, it does make you want to dig to the root of things as to why you're like that. Where did that come from? And once again, this goes back to learned behaviors. And not only learned behaviors, but when I say learned behavior, for instance, I'm going to use R. Kelly again, with me being a sexual abuse counselor and mentor. He's one of my best topics. R. Kelly literally grew up in a situation to where he was sexually abused as a child. And when he made people aware in our Black community, we don't talk about it. We don't acknowledge it. We hush, turn our heads. Don't you say nothing. Don't think it, don't speak it, don't think it, don't speak it. And that's really not how it should be in our community. But instead, this was something that repeatedly kept happening to R. Kelly over and over and over. So now you have one trauma stacked on top of another trauma, on top of another trauma. And if he was searching for help as a child, more than likely the people that he was looking for help from had also been through the exact same sexual trauma. So in the end, there really was no help for this boy who needed help. Every place of help he was trying to go to were also hurt people. So he was just traumatized and more traumatized and more traumatized. So without proper healing and guidance, with trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, you begin to manifest and harbor those negative feelings of, why is this happening to me? What is going on? Why did you choose me? You didn't do this to everybody else. Those feelings in a kid manifest. They manifest very fast because they're still young and they're still trying to process their way of life, their way of understanding and understanding the way things in life work. So, even though that was his life as a child, that was a child. He should have had someone there protecting him, explaining things to him, and really trying to help heal him from those traumas. But that's not what happened. Instead, those traumas and those negative energies and entities that had been put on this little boy then manifested into a grown-ass man. And I don't know how many of you guys have actually sat and watched that documentary, but he does have a split personality moment with his brother, where his brother acknowledges the fact that Robert pointed to a poster in his room and said, "I'm afraid of that man." And the brother was like, "Who are you talking about? You?" He said, "No, R. Kelly." So that comes into play where a child goes, or a person goes through so much trauma, they dissociate, or what we call, you lose your soul. You run on autopilot. But that is because you literally have trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, and your soul is like, overload, gotta process. The dial-up connection in here ain't working. Bing, bing, bing. Pause. So now you're running on your lower human vibrational self, which is probably literally everything that you've been taught, with good, bad, or indifferent. So now, here R. Kelly is, a man of power and all of this ability and stuff, and now he is literally using his negative manifestation on everyone else. He has families selling their children to him. "Oh, I'm going to give you a contract. I'm going to make you do this. I'm going to do that." There's videos been put out. And my thing is, at no point in time in the Black community was there ever a parent that was like, "Oh, you want my daughter to sing? Well, good. Let the whole fucking family come." Not one time was there parents that was like, "Oh, you need her to stay there with you? Great. We're all gonna stay." Okay. Water. That's never happened. That part never happened. So at this point, once again, these parents made those choices. R. Kelly is a grown man now, aware and very well aware that something is wrong, but still making those choices. This is where R. Kelly turns from being a victim as a child to now you're no longer a victim, but you are victimizing other people because you are an unhealed person. You get what I'm saying, guys? So in the healing ritual, when it comes to acknowledgement of self, past, and present, I really want some of y'all to sit and think, are y'all playing the victim? Have you played the victim? Are you still playing the victim to situations and circumstances that you have set in motion? But want to blame it on, oh, well, I was brought up this way. I was raised this way. Yes, as a child. Yes, you were raised that way. But guess what, honey? We grown now. Because I'm telling you, as a child, you didn't learn to smash that many females. Unless that was really what was going on in your house. As a child, you didn't learn to go party every Friday and Saturday and knew what Thirsty Thursdays was. That's learned behavior and reprogramming. Once you got old enough to do what you wanted, you reprogrammed yourself to do what you wanted. Just like people program themselves to do what they want. R. Kelly manifested those negative energies even though he was aware of how it made him feel. That is a soulless man running on autopilot that has not done any soul retrieval work. So therefore, he is going to keep victimizing people over and over and over. Simply because he was a traumatized victim that had no healing, no protection, no guidance. And his community put those negative energies and entities onto him to the point they manifested on a largely wide scale range. So once again, you guys, I bring all of this back to say, are you playing the victim in your life? How many situations and circumstances are you ready to take responsibility for so that you can move forward? And how many of those situations and circumstances are you ready to really sit down and hear that your parents almost have went through too? Your parents have made those exact same mistakes, decisions, and everything, just in a little bit of a different way. For instance, your mom could have been the person that didn't take shit from no man. Was always Mr. Motherfucker this, Mr. Motherfucker that. Nigga, you ain't gonna do shit. I got this by myself. But now you're the type of man that feels that every black woman should be as independent as your mom, not understanding the trauma that she had to go through to be that independent person. The fact that she was raped, molested, sodomized, left alone, had children by the people that she was raped by because she still is family members with these people. And now she has to hold the secrets of the person that you call Uncle John is really your dad. But for the sake of the family, we not gonna talk about it. So she just gonna put this display of strong black womanhood on. And where you thinking, oh wow, my mom's a strong black woman. No, your mom's a strong black traumatized woman. And now you're saying that you want that type of a female. Just like a lot of you ladies out here. I want a good man who ain't gonna do this, who ain't gonna do that, but don't realize a lot of the shit that you may be coming with. So what do you have to offer that's going to allow you to achieve what you're asking for? Because you can't say you're ready for a decent man if you're still bitch ass nigga this, bitch ass nigga that. You ain't shit, I got this. You fake ass, nah, you ain't got no real schmurny. I'm about these bills. Sweetheart, you should be about your own goddamn bills, first of all. Just saying. There's nothing wrong with accepting help. But don't become a charity case. And that is also learned behavior because you may have grown up seeing gifts being showered everywhere and not realizing how many times your mother or your father may have been on their knees to get that shit for you while you idolizing it. And now you're at the point in your life, well, if a man can't do this, that, and the third, then baby, But if he do it right, though, I'm gonna bust this pussy wide open. Really? So that's all you have to offer, eh? So not only are you up for being a cum rag, but you're also up for being a cum dumpster. Not realizing that the very thing that you're idolizing and worshiping are traumatized people, sexually abused people that have learned to take that energy and turn it into something else and manifest it negatively. Because at any point in time, any person has the willpower to stop. At any point in time, any place in space, any person has the willpower. When they ready to stop, they'll stop. When enough is enough, it'll be enough. You can't pass go, you can't collect $200, baby. I'm 32 years old and I cannot sit here and say that, oh yeah, I done been on drugs and everything. No ma'am, no ham, no turkey. That is not my life. There are plenty of things in life I am about, and that ain't one of them. That's a choice. Me growing up and being sexually abused my entire life did not get me to the point where I had the urge to go, ooh, we're another little boy or we're another little girl. No, sweetie. I was traumatized enough to realize, no, I'm cool. I don't want another person to feel the way that I feel. I don't want another person to be denied their truth. I don't want another person to be sitting here going to therapist after therapist after therapist, or going to your mom and dad repeatedly over the years trying to seek forgiveness when you're the person that should be forgiving people. People should be seeking that forgiveness from you. But because you are so hurt and traumatized, you don't realize that. And now that you've become an adult, you have now manifested those negative energies. Those negative energies that you've harbored, they have now manifested. And now you out here traumatizing other people and blaming them for your shit. You're blaming them for your choices. You're blaming them for your mistakes. And one thing that I always talk about is there is no such thing as fail. Fail means first attempt in learning. Excuses are all stepping stones to failure. And we don't fail. There are only two things that you can learn in this life. You can get blessings or you can get lessons. And eventually with them lessons, you're going to be tired of them being lessons. So you're going to stop doing whatever you're doing. Or you're going to get the lesson and make sure that it's a blessing next go around. So at this point in time, in place, in space, with acknowledging your past self and your present self, are you still playing the victim? Are you still blaming your choices and decisions? Well, this was going on at the time and place. Yeah, okay, we understand that. But in the back of your mind, had you actually slowed down, you know you could have made a better sound decision. But you chose not to. Because you wanted to be impatient. Because you wanted your wants instead of waiting to allow yourself to manifest your needs. Your wants have been manifested over your needs. So now that you've manifested all of these wants, are you still playing the victim in your life? Are you really ready to take responsibility and accountability for some of the situations and places that you have got yourself in? I'm going to tell you now, that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, to admit that some of those situations you got yourself into. Even with being sexually abused and raped or whatever the case may be. If you know you've been through that experience, that doesn't mean keep going out through Backpage and Craigslist meeting random people and then want to feel some type of way when something bad happens to you. Stop setting yourself up for failure. You can't claim to be a victim when you set yourself up to be victimized. Can't do that. So you guys, you know my motto. That was my lesson and teaching of the day. Namaste, you guys, but no, I'm going to stay over here. Holla.